I choose to believe we got a good football team, but we can't play on our heels. Like, we're not going to be what we think we can be, what we want to be, if that's the case. And so, again, that falls on everyone. I don't just point the finger at the players.
Man, Florida State came out throwing haymakers, deep shots right out of the gate, and they never stopped. Just foot on the gas the entire time. And that first half was maybe the best play calling that I saw all day long from anybody. They were running deep throws. They were running the ball right up the middle. Screen plays, sweeps, reverses, option plays. I mean, they were all over the place. It was such balanced play calling. And it was attack, 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 and they did not slow up. They hit Alabama in the mouth, and Bama was just not ready to counterpunch. From the beginning, that game absolutely belonged to Florida State. It may not have seemed like it. If you're just kind of watching it going, the score is this, or a couple of things happened there. I'm telling you what. Florida State looked ready, and it just felt to me like when I was watching that game, I just don't think this game was ever going to be in doubt. It just never felt like Alabama was actually in that game. Because they weren't. By the way, they had won over 20 straight season opening games. And you have to go back to 2007 and the last time they lost to an unranked opponent, Maryland Monroe. And you have to go back to when they lost to Louisiana Monroe back in, 2007? The last time they lost to an unranked opponent? Look, here's the bottom line. One of the things that I talked about a season ago was the time frame that Kalen DeBoer is going to get. And I quoted the great Jim Rome, who's always said, you don't want to be the guy who follows the guy. You want to be the guy who followed the guy. There's just too much pressure there. And the culture and everything else still belongs to Nick Saban. And here's the thing that I discussed really that was in a heavy way. And that was when DeBoer came along, there was still sort of that transition in college football with the NIL and the transfer portal, and all that was kind of simultaneously happening at the same time. And Nick Saban was realizing that he was losing control in terms of, I can no longer threaten my guys. I mean, he literally went on the Pat McAfee show and said, I like for my guys to play in fear. Okay, well, you can't bench guys and make them play in fear when they can just hit the portal and bounce. That no longer becomes a tactic. Manipulation, whatever you want to call it, the reality is that doesn't work anymore. That ship sailed, man, and you can't just stockpile 5-star recruits. Now, you have to go through what a junior college coach goes through. I got 1, maybe 2 years with a guy. And I have to make a good football team ASAP. I have to get these guys involved in my system ASAP. And what little time I have with them, the way the NCAA continues to hamstring us, what little time I have with them, I've got to make them understand our philosophies. It's not easy. And now a D1 coach is experiencing what all these JUCO coaches have went through. You might go through the trouble of recruiting somebody, but you might only get them for a season or two. And Alabama is feeling that wrath maybe more than anybody else in college football right now. But it's because the fall is getting so far, right? Look, when you're on the top of the mountain, once you're up there, right? But when you fall, man, that is a long, hard fall. But here's the thing. This once again alludes to why I don't agree with preseason top 25 polls. We saw, 9, 10 teams from the SEC in the preseason top 25 polls, especially the AP. LSU was able to pull it out against Clemson. Texas A&M struggled for a little while there. They pulled away late, but they didn't look fantastic. Alabama got beat. Texas got beat. And sorry, SEC fan, whether you like claiming Texas or not, you're going to have to. And by the way, a season ago, they were the only team who got your conference a playoff win. You're certainly not going to denounce Alabama. Don't say, well, Alabama championships. Listen, that team is there. The bottom line here is over half of the SEC was ranked coming into this season. And Nick Saban and everybody else can be on College Game Day griping about these types of games all they want to and how there's no incentive to win these types of games and blah, 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 blah. All that says to me is I want to be able to create an excuse for when I lose. Another quality loss. It wasn't a quality loss to Vanderbilt a season ago. It certainly wasn't a quality loss to OU. You end up losing a total of 3 football games. There were other teams that were more deserving to be in, whether you liked it or not. And whatever you've done over the last 10 years doesn't signify that there's a guarantee that you're going to be amazing in the playoffs or that you're going to automatically be good this season. This season. That's all. And as far as Caleb DeBoer goes, look, man, he's on the hot seat. You know, I said that he had 2-3 years tops to begin with. Alabama's not going to put up with it. They're still on the high horse. They still think that they are the premier team in all of college football. They're not that far removed from Nick Saban. He's not going to be forgotten anytime soon, especially when he's all over the television advocating for Alabama and the SEC alike. You know, the thing that I discussed was you had to be a good enough coach to be able to come in and take what was there and pretty much find a way to make it your own. But that blown lead against Georgia to me just signified everything I needed to know about Alabama. Now, it's too early in the year. We don't know what this win or loss is going to look like for Florida State or Alabama going forward. Don't forget, a season ago, Notre Dame beat A&M in their backyard, turned around, lost to Northern Illinois. While they were at home, Northern Illinois finished the season horribly. Notre Dame ended up competing for a national championship. A lot of people thought it was an upset when Georgia Tech beat Florida State a season ago. Florida State ended up being 2-10. Georgia Tech barely finished above 500. We don't know what the win or loss right now is going to look like for either one of these teams. Florida State looked great, but did they look great against maybe just a really bad football team? And it was the same question that I asked a season ago about Georgia Tech and Florida State. I'm not, all these people, you hate the SEC. I don't care, man. I don't have any bias. I don't work for a network. I hate to break it to everybody. I don't work for a network that's affiliated with the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the Southern Belt, the Pac. I have no allegiance to anybody. I say what I think is real. And what was real was the SEC. They, I guess you had that wonderful win over Toledo. I think Mizzou beat Central Arkansas. But in the bigger games today, you struggled a lot. Speaking of struggling a lot, Kansas State, how they're ranked where they are right now blows me away. I wouldn't be surprised if they were out of the rankings come Monday morning, to be honest with you. But then again, that's why we don't like it. It's just I can't stand it. You lose to Iowa State. You turn around, you struggle with North Dakota State. Somebody's going to go, well, North Dakota State, I don't care. They're an FCS team, man. And I don't even think the Big 12 is good enough to be a power conference anymore. I've been saying that for years. It's got nothing to do with SEC. It's got everything to do with bias, which I can't stand. I can't stand the bias. And I can't stand the voting system that allows the bias to continue. We need a rule system. And everything will just sort itself out. I think that's pretty simple. Because as long as a playoff is voted on, it's an invitational, not a playoff. I'm just saying. Speaking of more Big 12 and coaching struggles, Coach Prime, man, he has got to figure out that quarterback situation. Salter just did not look good. I tell you what, they were missing Shador. It was obvious. There was really great improvement in their run game. The offensive line looked so much better to me. The defense was outstanding. They created 3 turnovers inside of 8 minutes, but the offense was completely unable to capitalize. And Salter had wide open guys, and he either just didn't pull the trigger or was way off. I mean, you know, he had Simeon Price wide open at one point in that football game, and instead of just hitting him, he wanted to, why didn't you drift? You can't go around blaming players when you're missing wide open throws. That's a leadership problem. And it was obvious that there were no leaders on that Colorado football team. And I think that's what Prime was upset about when he was getting it the way that he was on the sideline. I think he's going, who's going to step up here? We need somebody to step up. And he was very critical of the offense. Hey, we got to score the ball. And they couldn't. Umpteen opportunities in that football game. Colorado logically should have won running away. If you create 3 turnovers inside of 8 minutes, bare minimum, you should have a 9-point advantage right then and there. I will give a little bit of credit to Georgia Tech's defense, but for the most part, if this is the best that Colorado has to offer in terms of quarterback play, man, it's about to be a long season, Brody. And I mean long. And it's sad because I think Colorado's done everything that they needed to do to improve the rest of that football team. Prime has taken a lot for creating a negative culture and, not having anybody else other than, Shiloh, Shador, and Travis. Everybody else was just garbage. That offensive line a season ago was 77th in all college football. Middle of the road. And if you break it down by sacks after the average that was allowed last season for college football offensive linemen, they were dead last in the NCAA. Put that in perspective. There's over 130 teams in Division I. So that was not a good look at all. And I felt like they were a lot better, but it was decision-making on the part of Salter that really hindered Colorado. It wasn't a defensive problem, I'll tell you that much. Speaking of defense, I said that I thought the program a couple days ago that I felt it was going to be a low-scoring game. Now, I thought it was going to be whoever could run the football the best. But I really felt that the defense was going to win the day, and it did. Now, neither quarterback really played all that great. But at the end of the day, here's the reality. Only one quarterback came in with Heisman hype. Only one quarterback came in with a lot of people saying he's the future. Only one quarterback came in with people saying he's going to win the Heisman, a national championship, and then go number 1 draft in the NFL. There was only one quarterback that had that hype in this football game, and that was Arch Manning, who just looked lost. Poor decision making. He looked timid back there. I mean, they really rattled him. He didn't even have 50 yards throwing in the first half of football. Now, that's a game where I give credit to the Ohio State defense for the most part. They stopped Texas on 4 out of 5 of their 4th down attempts, not to mention inside the goal line right there, or goal-to-goal situation. You're by the goal line. And they were able to stop that. I'm telling you, that is a game that Texas is really going to have a lot of regret on. They had plenty of chances. They just could not capitalize. And this is exactly what I and some other people were talking about with Arch Manning. If he was that good, then why is it Quinn Ewers was a starter? initially Ewers was going to go to the NFL. And when he decided to come back, Texas could have easily said, you come play college football you want to, but you're not going to be here. We got our guy. We're paying Arch a lot of money. We've got him. We're good to go. They didn't do that. And don't tell me it's about loyalty to a quarterback. That had nothing to do with it. Ewers is injury prone on top of everything else. There wasn't any loyalty in terms of decision making there. That was just Ewers being the better quarterback. Better than Arch, at least from what we've seen so far. The sample size has been that. He got yanked very quickly out of that Georgia game a season ago. He played against two very middle-of-the-road football teams. And I thought the play calling was horrible too. It was an all-around bad game. Again, that's why I don't like preseason top 25 polls. And how is the number one ranked team an underdog on the road to begin with? If you're number one, you're number one. That's all there is to it. That you can't tell me that, well, because no, there's no justifying a number one being the underdog. If they were, then there was a reason for that. And that tells me that they shouldn't have been number one to begin with. More SEC, Tennessee. They beat Syracuse. Look, Syracuse was way too little, way too late. You know, they started to make a run late third quarter into the fourth quarter, but, you know, the game doesn't start in the third quarter. The game started when the game started, and you just were not prepared. And as much as I love Fran Brown, you know, one of the things I talked about the other day was, look, you allowed our best wide receiver, or your best wide receiver, pardon me, sorry, I'm a Syracuse fan, have been since I was about 11, first time I saw McNabb play. You allowed your best wide receiver to bolt because you said, I'm not paying a receiver X amount of money. It's not going to happen. So when you put out that APB, you hurt yourself in recruiting. You hurt yourself in the portal because everybody knows, okay, I'm not going to Syracuse to get paid, that's for sure. And look, it's fine if you want loyal guys who are going to be there for 3-4 years. Doesn't mean that we can't think about paying him. And how long has Pena been there? And he's been around for some bad football teams, and he's carried that offense. Look how much better that offense looked. You know, someone's going to say, well, you had a quarterback that's in the NFL. Man, he is not going to work out, I promise you. He had Marvin Harrison Jr. at first, and then he had Pena next. No. It's not going to happen. Sure, I mean, you know, we'll beat some, you know, pretty mediocre teams this season, but, you know, and to be honest with you, I can't say that I'm impressed with Tennessee watching that football game because I don't think beating Syracuse is a really good sample size. If I were to hang my hat on anything at this point, it would more be along the fact that you should have been able to put that game away and never allowed Syracuse into it whatsoever. So to me, not really a great look from Tennessee. Your foot's on the neck. Keep it there, man. Yeah, I think off-season choices by Fran Brown are what's hurting us. And, you know, until Syracuse decides we don't need Fran Brown anymore, unless he backtracks in some way, you know, even Dabo Swinney had to give in at some point. I'm just saying. Speaking of Dabo, you know, look, I think that's a game where I'm going to credit LSU. That's a game where I'm going to credit LSU because Clemson had that game well in hand, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But, you know, LSU was just so patient, and even though they fumbled at the end of halftime, I mean, look, they could have gone a lot different for them. They could have said, man, we're just not going to be able to do this. They missed a field goal, you know, The touchdown, whether it was or wasn't, I mean, that's, 50-50. I guess that depends on who you ask. They overcame quite a lot in that football game. And Clemson really beat themselves holding jerseys, man. Look, like it or not, Clemson fan, you can flip that camera off all you want to. That was twice today that got caught on camera. You can flip people off all you want to, man. It happened. It did happen. And they beat themselves with penalties. You had drop passes. You had bad throws. You had poor decision making. You had so-so play calling. I think you should have ran the football a lot more than you did. Look, at the end of the day, you got nobody to blame for that game but yourself, and credit LSU because defensively, they kept that offense in the football game because they were not that good. They did just enough, but they certainly did more than Clemson, and that's all that really matters. And even then, Clemson was still in a position at the end of that game, as badly as they played, especially in the second half on offense, they still had a shot at the end of that game and couldn't come through. They had so many chances in that game, it was ridiculous. And at some point, you can't blame the officiating. You got to look yourself in the mirror and you got to go, we blew it. And they played great. That's it. It's as simple as that. There's no real hardcore explanation as to what happened in that football game. Other than the simple answer is, look, we didn't play great. Bunch of chances. We blew it. Credit LSU's defense. They did amazing. Our guys had too many penalties. We blew it. One of those pass interference plays was what, 3rd and goal? You're giving them more chances. That's on you. You're getting beat. And look, there's a part of me that goes, if you know that you're going to get beat deep, most coaches, especially at the collegiate level, won't bother you taking that penalty because it's 15 versus giving up 6. Simultaneously, you're getting burned like that over and over and over again to the point where you have to do that. That becomes a different problem. That tells me you're burnt toast and I need you out of the game. Either that or schematically, we got to come up with something else to get you a safety on the backside because you're just not cutting the snuff. And that's that. All right, everybody, I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. I'm wherever you listen in the podcast. Take a device to play the Underground Sports Show, or pardon me, that's the old one. Take your device to play the Drew Duncan Sports Show, The Smoke, Drew Duncan. Everybody stay safe, take care of yourselves, have a wonderful rest of your night and or day. Do not forget YouTube and TikTok, VRL Drew Duncan. Good night, everybody.